The ladies' free programme in the European Skating Championships is on BBC2 now.
Viewers of a sensitive nature may wish to know that later on this evening, BBC1 will be showing scenes of unmitigated enjoyment and strong language.
Rabbit, porridge, carbolic, darts.
Carrot Confidential, live at 9:05 tonight on BBC1.
In a quarter of an hour, Larry enters an early midlife crisis at the ripe old age of 24 in Perfect Strangers. That's at 5:20, but now it's 5:05 and time for the news with Jan Leeming. This is BBC1.
Police shoot a man dead and wound another during an armed raid in London. There's a hint of election as Mrs. Thatcher lashes out at Labour and the Alliance. And small investors ask for 8 times too many British Airways shares. Police are carrying out an investigation after a police sergeant shot dead an armed man in central London last night. But a senior policeman says he's satisfied that correct firearms procedures were followed. Police were lying in wait at the Sir John Soane Museum in Holborn when 6 men tried to enter the building. 2 of the men were shot and 1 died later in hospital. The other 4 were arrested as they ran away, and another man was arrested later.
The men, travelling in a car and van, drew up outside the museum at about 5 o'clock last night, the time it normally closes. Police were inside and outside the building, lying in wait after a tip-off. They said they had a number of days to prepare the operation, which included a large number of unarmed officers and 4 armed policemen in full uniform. Members of the public had earlier been cleared from the museum, which houses priceless art treasures. 3 of the men got out of their car and walked up the steps to the museum door. One of them rang the doorbell. Inside, a police officer opened the door. As he did, a man named as Dennis Bergen burst into the hall. He was brandishing a sawn-off shotgun and shouting threats. The police say that one of the armed officers inside, a 31-year-old sergeant, fired 3 shots. First, he shouted warnings to his colleagues to get down. Then he shouted armed police. Dennis Bergen was shot in the lower chest and another man was shot in the arm. The 4 other men fled from the scene but were arrested later. Police have spent the day searching the area in front of the museum for anything discarded by the men as they ran, possibly weapons. The operation comes only days after a Home Office working party issued guidelines for much tighter controls on the use of firearms by police.
There is always a possibility that must be kept in open mind that the police should not have fired. Of course there must be. That's why you've been asking me whether I'm satisfied. I can only say on the limited facts that I have available at the moment that I am satisfied that the police officer was right and correct to fire.
The Prime Minister has made a stinging attack on the Labour Party and the Liberal SDP alliance in a speech to young Conservatives at Scarborough. There are suggestions the speech could be her opening shot in the election campaign, although Mrs. Thatcher firmly denied this.
The Prime Minister again tried to dampen down speculation about an early election, but her speech was full of election themes. Unemployment was now falling, people's standard of living was never higher. And with next month's tax-cutting budget clearly in mind, Mrs. Thatcher was eager to brand Labour as the party of high taxation.
Taxation's not like cod liver oil. It doesn't do us more good the more unpleasant it is. More income tax leads to less incentive to less effort to less prosperity. What sort of policy is that?
Mrs. Thatcher was also scathing about Labour's non-nuclear defence policy, about what she called utterly despicable left-wingers who exposed military secrets, and on education too, the Prime Minister attacked Labour.
Parents don't want their children brainwashed by Labour's peace studies. They want their children to be able to read, write and add up.
Mrs. Thatcher didn't forget the Alliance Party. She accused them of lacking unity. But her overall theme was why she thought the Tories would win the next election, coupled with a warning about complacency. We will work for victory, she said, every inch of the way.
Special branch detectives have returned more material from the BBC's Secret Society television series to the corporation's offices in Glasgow. 6 programmes were seized last week during an investigation into the leaking of information about the Zircon spy satellite.
Last night, the police returned 6 items, including 3 completed programmes from the Secret Society series. This morning, 2 officers arrived at Broadcasting House in Glasgow to return another box of material. The plastic box contained a total of 16 items, which were checked by the programme's producer, Brian Barr. There was 1 tin of film and 15 separate soundtracks relating to 2 further episodes in the series, one on radar equipment procurement, another on the workings of cabinet committees. These still require about another 10 days' work before they'll be ready to be broadcast, and the police have agreed to work through a further list of items supplied by the BBC with a view to returning that material as soon as possible to allow the programmes to be prepared for transmission. But first, they'll have to ensure that none of the items has any relevance to their inquiries on the withdrawn programme about the spy satellite Project Zircon. It looks unlikely that any material relating to that episode or the programme itself will be returned to the BBC in the foreseeable future.
Despite heavy oversubscription in the British Airways share issue, the Transport Secretary John Moore has said he expects everyone who applied will get at least 200 shares. From the City, David Shookman reports.
Staff at Hill Samuel Merchant Bank have been working all day. They've had to analyse over 1 million applications. They've received 9 times more than expected from individual investors and a staggering 23 times more overall. British Airways have now decided that the small investors' allocation of shares should be increased to nearly half the offer.
Large numbers of people own it directly. Many institutions for which people own their shares also have a major stake in it. But the excitement of actually seeing the public get involved in a direct way in what is a great British airline. That's to me the most important sign of success.
The leader of the Shiite Muslim Amal militia, Nabi Berri, has said he expects the Archbishop of Canterbury's special envoy, Terry Waite, to be freed very soon. Mr. Waite has been missing in Beirut since January the 20th. He'd been attempting to negotiate the release of foreign hostages.
I am sure that he will be released soon.
How soon?
Not by months.
By weeks, by days?
Between weeks and days.
The Soviet Union is reported to have released at least 42 dissidents from internal exile and labour camps. Mrs. Yelena Bonner, wife of the human rights activist Dr. Andrei Sakharov, said many of them had been in work camps in the Ural Mountains and had already made contact with her husband. It's the largest group to be freed recently, and it's seen as the most hopeful sign yet of a change in the Soviet attitude to human rights. Football, and Everton are the new league leaders. Adrian Heath scored the winner as Everton beat Coventry 3-1 to take over from Arsenal at the top of Division 1. In Scotland, Graham Souness was among the scorers as his Rangers side beat Hearts 5-2. It's the first time Hearts have been beaten at home in the league for 2.5 years. A memorial service has been held in Oxford for the Earl of Stockton, the former Prime Minister Harold Macmillan, who died at the end of last year, aged 90. Members of the Macmillan family, including Lord Stockton's grandson, who succeeded to the title, headed the list of mourners. Also there to pay tribute to the late elder statesman were representatives of the family publishing firm, and a solemn procession of officials and academics of Oxford University. Lord Stockton was for many years its Chancellor. Edward Heath was also there. He's a possible candidate for the Chancellorship. A blessing was given by the Archbishop of Canterbury. And that's all for now. Our main news tonight is on BBC1 at 20 to 10.
These fronts will give us all some rain, but clearer weather will come into the north for a time tomorrow before these fronts bring yet more rain back across the country tomorrow night. This evening, rain sweeping eastwards across the country, some quite heavy bursts of rain in places. By the morning, clearing up over many parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, and perhaps the extreme northwestern fringe of England there. Perhaps just for a time, too, some sleet or snow on the higher ground of Scotland, but no frost anywhere. 6 Celsius, 43 Fahrenheit, breezy in the north. In the morning, the country divides into 3. Wales, central and southern England, here cloudy throughout the day, we think, with rain at times. Northern England and North Wales, here A little bit of brightness now and again, but a lot of cloud and some rain there too. Scotland and Northern Ireland, a little sunshine, broken cloud, 1 or 2 showers, mainly in the northwest. In the afternoon, the rain belt swiveling around like that. Temperatures a mild day everywhere. And there is a summary of tomorrow's weather. Bright in the north, some rain at times in southern districts. And that's all from me.